Hey there, welcome to the DFS Build NBA edition. I'm Kevin Roberts, ready to go over the showdown slate between the Jazz and Mavericks for Thursday. Obviously, this is a big night for football, so I'll be putting out a Thursday Night Football DFS Showdown video as well. But hey, there is one NBA game, and we can try to take advantage of that. Yesterday was a bit of a mixed bag. I mean, like, we had so many good calls. Like, all the studs we liked went crazy. Wemby, Giannis, we liked Cade. We still liked the chalk in Cat and Jalen. Like every guy wrecked. All those guys wrecked. They all got 60 plus. Most of them got 70 plus. And Giannis almost got 100. And most of the values we liked did really well too. We really loved the Sixers guys. They crushed. McCain got like 56 points. We had to adjust a little bit when Jalen Noel was not listed as a starter, and we had to adjust when Ryan Rollins was ruled out. I ended up liking DeLon Wright. I played him over Malik Beasley at like a fraction of the ownership. So, of course, Malik Beasley careers and DeLon Wright gets 20, which is fine for the price. But then he did not play in the fourth quarter or the overtime. So it could have been really fun to end the night with, Giannis and DeLon versus Ron Holland, who also did not play the fourth or overtime, which was very, very frustrating for me. So I just min cashed. I broke even on the slate. It could have been really fun. But it's just one of those things where, like, yeah, you can hit on Wemby and Giannis and a lot of these values. But if the guys underneath also crush, Cat got 70, Cade got 70, Jalen got 60. Jalen and Cat were off to really slow starts. So I was feeling real good going into halftime that I thought, like, okay, a lot of chalk was eaten here and that chalk was not performing. And now Giannis was not going to be under owned, but Wemby was only 23% owned in my entry. So I felt pretty good about that. So it didn't really work out. I did not hit big, but hopefully you listened to our advice and played some of those picks and just made the right pivots and ended up maybe playing Cat and Arcade and benefited. If you did, drop it in the comments how you did last night, if you cashed or won big. I'm here to just hand out free advice again for the showdown slate. Smash that like button if this helps you out in any way. And if you like getting free content, also subscribe to the channel. If you want to get these videos all the time, you want breakdowns of the slate, you need a little bit of help with your process, help looking at ownership and projections and matchups and just trying to figure out what you want to do. We try to keep our videos a half hour or shorter on showdown slates, probably 15 to 20 minutes. So hopefully it's kind of easily digestible content and it helps you out. And if you subscribe, you will get alerted to that all the time. All right, let's dive into it for the showdown slate for tonight. We have the Mavs at Utah. Dallas is on like a 3-game losing streak. Utah is not good. Walker Kessler is out for the Jazz, and PJ Washington is doubtful once again for Dallas. And we also know Taylor Hendricks and Dante Exum are out for Utah and Dallas as well. So that frees up a little bit of room in the rotation. Let's just take a quick look at what happened in each team's previous game to look at their rotations. Usual suspects for Jazz that have been running a deeper rotation, even with Kessler out and Hendricks, basically dead, obviously, because he's out for the season. So it looks like Kyle Filipowski and Jordan Clarkson are probably the first two guys we can look at and feel confident about. There are other guys we can look to for value, but they are dice rolls for sure. Drew Eubanks is going to be tough to trust at with only 4 minutes his last game, but Bryce Sensabaugh, Johnny Juzang, and Isaiah Collier are going to get 10 plus minutes probably. If this game stays close, it's possible Utah runs a tighter rotation. But so just with that in mind, I probably would prefer Filipowski or Clarkson off the bench as far as being a little bit more reliable. But if you need funds, especially want to slide Luka into captain, then we can look to their bench because they've been running a deeper rotation with the injuries for some reason. I'm not sure why. For Dallas, again, the last game with the Warriors, huge game, went down to the wire. This game may not play out quite the same. Obviously, there is blowout risk. It is a 9-point spread with the Mavs as road favorites. I think the fact that the game is in Utah could help the Jazz possibly keep it close, but it's not really the best matchup across the board for them. This might be a spot where Dallas ends up flexing their defensive muscle and just blows Utah away. So just right off the bat, I'm not like super excited to stack up Jazz players in general, and I'm not excited to go pay for Utah guys, but it's the only game on the slate. So sometimes rather than play into a projected blowout, it's fun to just kind of hope the game stays close and we get an explosive one. And then, we fire up some of these Jazz guys to mix in with, obviously Luka. Anyways, for the Dallas rotation, very tight in the last game, possibly what we can come to expect here. There are still some values that obviously if they got minutes, they would be a little bit interesting. Maxi Kleba is probably the one that stands out, but he has not been playing. So I probably won't play him on the slate unless he end up starting or something. But it was pretty tight. All the starters got good minutes. Daniel Gafford split the center minutes with Derek Lively. Both those guys are just, really solid points per minute guys and pretty cheap relative to this slate. And then trickling down, Jaden Hardy pushed for 20 minutes, a little surprising to be honest. And then Spencer Dinwiddie got over 10, did absolutely nothing in the last game. But if he's going to get 10 minutes, we have to look at him on a showdown slate. The surprising one is Quentin Grimes with almost 29 minutes off the bench. He's basically their sixth man at the moment. And he's really, really cheap. The thing is, I don't know how much we can trust that because he only had 9 minutes the game prior and he had no other game this season over 20 minutes. So I don't know. I'm probably just going to trust it because he's really cheap and it's a showdown slate. All right, let's go over the projections. We have no ownership yet, which is fine. It's a showdown slate. I don't really care. We know the guys that are going to take ownership. It's going to be Luka up top for sure. Highest owned captain, highest owned player across the board. I absolutely am not going to fade him. The only alteration would be, do we slide Luka over to the flex if we're doing one lineup? Or, if you're doing a lot of lineups, absolutely, you're going to slide Luka over and see if you can get somebody else to pop off. And maybe like Luka just has a down game. Or maybe just Luka does wreck, but there's a second guy in this game that can also wreck. So mostly I'm playing Luka in the captain, and I'm 100% playing Luka overall. You can absolutely have a few lineups where you fade Luka in the event that he would get injured. The game is just a massive blowout, or he just, comes out and shoots like 3 for 17, which, by the way, he's literally done this year. But I'm not going to play that game. You really, overall in DFS, just, you want to play the odds a lot. What's the most logical thing to happen? Let's try to lean on that. But then in general, especially a more volatile sport, probably like NFL or MLB, you do want to lean into variance. Like shit happens, like different things happen than expected. It can be the case in NBA where maybe the Jazz blow out the Mavs here. Like that's not what anybody thinks is going to happen, but it certainly can happen. So you could play a Jazz stack with Luka, or you could play a mix of the teams without Luka or something. Anything is on the table, but I try to lean into the odds. What's most likely to happen here? What's most likely to happen is Luka's going to have a really big game and one of the best possible matchups of the year. The Jazz are terrible defensively, and the Mavs are probably going to win, and they're probably going to win in a blowout. So that's probably what we're looking at. Now, I am probably going to go against the blowout narrative. The other two things I'm riding with. Luka's going to crush. The Mavs are going to crush. But I'm going to hope that the Jazz keep it close. And not knowing ownership, I'm probably going to play into that with one or two extra Jazz players that other people don't want to play. So if you're going to slide Luka to flex, you have to think who can match Luka or come close enough to the point where not captaining Luka is not going to kill me. There's probably realistically 3 safe-ish captain pivots, and that's going to be John Collins, who's coming off a 50-point fantasy outing, his second of the year, and no Walker Kessler. So Collins is going to start and get good run and should be pretty productive. Kyrie Irving is just a direct leverage play on Luka in general. He has the 3rd best projection of the slate. He's not cheap in the captain, but he's a lot cheaper than Luka. So you can definitely build a more, comfortable looking lineup with Kyrie in the captain instead. Kyrie is capable of getting 50 to 60 fantasy points. He's very quiet last game with only 31. So I'm imagining he'll bounce back. If you don't want to eat the Luka captain chalk, Kyrie is a very good option to go after him. And then the other guy is going to be Lauri Markkanen, just naturally. I mean, Markkanen has not exhibited much of a ceiling on the year. He's been in and out of the lineup with injuries. He's probably going to be traded at some point. And he's only averaging 30.6 fantasy points on the year, which is disgusting. He's not even the best fantasy producer of his team right now. But he can be. So if people are going to look at his game logs and his overall production and all that stuff, I love Lauri Markkanen as a captain play. I mean, just looking at raw points projection here, he's the 4th guy. So naturally, I would imagine there's a decent chance that he has the 4th highest ownership if not less. Like people might be looking at value plays and sliding Luka to the flex. But if I'm going to bank on this being a close game, which that's my personal strategy on this slate, I think Markkanen is one of the first guys I'm looking at. Kyrie, John Collins, and those two guys look great. There's nothing wrong with them. But I think there's a decent chance that if the game stays close, Lowry pops off. And he's also saving me a little bit of money. It's definitely more money compared to Kyrie and Luka. And he should be less owned than John Collins and the captain. So that's probably right now my favorite captain play outside of Luka. I think if you're running 150 lineups, I don't know, 70%, I would probably put Luka in the captain just because he's by far the most likely play to get 50 plus fantasy points and certainly the only play that can get like 80. So Luka in the captain is probably the number one thing to do. But the number two for me is probably going to be Lowry if we can hope that this game stays close. Now, it's NBA Showdown, so you can do whatever you want. You can go play other guys for Utah who are going to have minutes. Keontae George, Colin Sexton, Jordan Clarkson. All three of those guys are totally fine. You can captain them. I prefer them in the flex just because Sexton and Clarkson specifically are very scoring dependent. They're not going to rack up steals and blocks and rebounds consistently. So if they're not hitting their shots, they're going to hurt you in the captain pretty badly. Keontae George is a little bit safer. Speaking of not hitting his shots, I mean, he is very touch and go, and the matchup straight up by the numbers is not that great. But he's a real threat to get a double-double, more so than Sexton or Clarkson. And he actually displayed his upside 3 games ago with 53 fantasy points against the Bulls. Obviously, that was like a dream spot. Target guys against the Bulls, that's for sure. But he just has upside, and he has a better floor than either of those two guys. But all three are in play. If I had to pick one, Keontae George would be the guy right after Lowry as far as Utah goes that I'd want to put in the captain spot. There is Klay Thompson. He can get hot. You never know. He did bounce back and have a really nice game against the Warriors with a little bit of revenge there. 22 real points, 33 fantasy points. Another guy, though, that he needs to hit his shots. Otherwise, he's not going to pay off. He has 2 games on the entire year over 30 fantasy points. That's all you really need to say about that. It's Klay. He is historically an elite outside shooter. He's a third scoring option for Dallas. It's the Jazz. It's not the worst spot to take a shot on Klay, blowing up and having a big scoring game. It certainly can happen. The only issue is even if he scores 30 real points, he might end up with like 33 fantasy points. He just doesn't do a whole lot besides score, and he hasn't even been that good of a scorer on the year. So Klay is absolutely viable. I just would prefer him in the flex unless you just want to really lean into variance and just hope like Klay comes out and drops 40 points against the Jazz. Certainly within the realm of possibilities, just not something I would necessarily think is, likely to happen. So next up, we can go target the Mavs centers, Derek Lively and Daniel Gafford. Probably both going to be playing 22, 25 minutes, barring foul trouble or injury. The matchup with the Jazz is good. Gafford put up 23 fantasy points the last time he faced them. Lively had 30. Gafford started the last game, and it's just a better point per minute guy historically than Lively. Both are really, really good plays. They're both about the same price. I think Gafford's 900 more in the captain, so I think if I was going to captain one of them, I think I'd go Gafford. He just has a little bit more upside when it comes to rebounding and block shots. And the price differential might lower his ownership as well, just in general, whether it be captain or flex. So I think he is my preferred play, but they're very similar. It's a really good matchup for both of them. So I think they both have success. You can play them together, but I think I would probably just play one and hope that, Gafford is the one that has the better game. As far as value, not super eager to go play the likes of Kyle Filipowski, Najee Marshall, or any of these other guys I mentioned in the captain. They feel like more like flex plays, and I had over here in flex the whole time actually for projection. But as we move along, like Najee Marshall projected for 30 minutes and 24 fantasy points, really good flex play at 4.6. Kyle Filipowski, 24 minutes, 21 fantasy points, another really good flex play. I have no issue there whatsoever. The values that I probably wouldn't race to as far as projections and just like safety and everything, like Isaiah Collier, Spencer Dinwiddie, Cody Williams, like these guys will be on the floor for 10 plus minutes, but there's just nothing safe about them. I think I'm just going to trust what we saw in the last game with Quentin Grimes. If Quentin Grimes is going to get around 20 plus minutes again. I love him as a salary saver at 1.6K. These other guys are in play because they're going to get a handful of minutes on this slate, but he just feels like the better option right now. I mean, they trusted him last game in a huge game against the Warriors, 29 minutes. That is not nothing to sneeze at. So I like that quite a bit. If I run through it real quick, if we're looking at, well, hold on a second. Let me flip it over to captain. Just like a rough build if we're doing a single entry. If you have Luka in the captain, then we can go over to utility, and who we definitely like. I like Quentin Grimes. Like Quentin Grimes to save me money at only 1.8K. Go get somebody like Najee Marshall or Kyle Filipowski to save us even more money. We can get 8.1. Go get Gafford. Then we have even more money to work with. I really like Lowry from the other side. What does that leave us with? 9.5. And then kind of leaves us in no man land at that point. But really, just some kind of idea as far as like you can actually have a pretty comfortable build. You'd be leaving. You probably have to choose between John Collins or Lowry, which is fine. And I'd lean Lowry just because I think recency bias will have a little bit more ownership go toward John Collins. And then you probably would have to fade Kyrie on a build like this. Now, if we want to clear it out here and we want to fade Luka in the captain and slide him over, and we want to go with somebody like Lowry, then we have a little bit more wiggle room. We can go get Quentin Grimes again like I liked. Go get Daniel Gafford like I liked. Maybe Najee Marshall or Kyle Filipowski. And then we can kind of get whoever we want after that. You can pair Luka with Kyrie, or you can go get John Collins or Lowry, and then you can even pay up over Daniel Gafford or somebody else if you'd like to. So that's probably where I'm at for this slate. It's a showdown slate. It just is what it is. I'm not going to play very hard. I'm going to take a break after being disappointed greatly last night. But I think, Luka is the obvious captain. I have no problem with that, especially with pretty solid value plays in the flex. But my personal take is just going to be targeting the Jazz guy that is probably going to be overlooked and then slide Luka over to the flex. It's mostly Luka and the captain, but when I'm not doing that, I'm going to go target Lowry and hope for a big game and hopefully he can keep it close. And then try to add in some Jazz guys. So even like for this example, maybe I would actually go get another Jazz guy. Maybe it's John Collins. So you have Lowry captain with John Collins, and then let's see who else is here. Oh, no, I did have Lowry there. I don't know. You could just say Colin Sexton, even go over Najee too. Maybe Klay Thompson there. The point is, you could construct the rosters however you want and run it through, lineup optimizers and get a better picture of what the slate looks like. Also, factor in ownership. When we actually get ownership numbers, it's going to be a lot easier to see which of these plays stand out and how we can actually gain leverage on the slate. I'm kind of projecting that. I think Luka is going to be very owned. Kyrie and John Collins are going to be very owned. So right away, the guy with the next best projection that makes a lot of sense, either in a lot of my lineups in the flex or even a little bit in captain, is going to be marketing. So that's my stance for this slate. Hopefully this helps you out a little bit. Certainly a lot of good plays for a showdown slate, a little more than I expected. And hopefully it's a good close game. All right, that's going to do it for me. If you want some advice for the Thursday Night Football showdown slate, click the video at the end of this. Once it pops, we'll actually shoot it later. And hopefully we can help you out there as well. All right, thanks for watching and good luck.